Everything has pros and cons, right? Even living in Vancouver, Washington. In this video, that's what we're talking about. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Living in the Pacific Northwest with Hal Byrd. I'm Hal Byrd, and I am a certified relocation luxury realtor in the Northwest. I'm licensed in both Oregon and Washington and cover pretty much all of the Portland metro area. So whether you're looking in the Portland area and the Oregon suburbs, or you're looking in Southwest Washington, I would be more than happy to help you. So whether you want to buy, sell, or invest, shoot me a text at 360-818-4438. You can also book a Zoom with me in the description below. So let's jump right in. This is going to be a information-filled video, but a concise video. So we're gonna start with the pros. Now, the first pro for living in Vancouver, Washington is the beauty. It is such a beautiful place to live, the outdoors. One of the things for me growing up in Southern California, I was used to very brown hills, trees, but not a ton, and tons of development, and really just dry conditions, basically the desert. And up here, it does get rain, but in exchange for that, it is just an absolutely beautiful place to live. Even when you're just within the city of Vancouver, there are an abundance of trees and flowers and nature, and there's a few waterfalls if you know where to look. The Columbia River is there. There's just such diversity in the beauty. And so I really feel like here, the beauty of the outdoors and just the beauty of this area is baked into everyday life. And it still has a smaller town, suburban feel. So it feels maybe large if you're coming from somewhere like Wyoming, but quite small if you're coming from places that are big metro areas, whether that's along the West Coast or even the East Coast. The second biggest pro that I've found living in Vancouver, Washington is the people. People here are so friendly and neighborly. I recently had a client who was visiting for the first time, and they were talking about how they couldn't believe how friendly everyone was everywhere they went. Whether they went to breakfast or the grocery store or the gas station, everyone was just so friendly, and they were so genuinely surprised. And they were like, I hope that this trend continues because it's so distinctly different from where we're from. And it really made an impression on them how friendly people are. So you've heard of Southern hospitality. I call what we have here Southwest Washington hospitality. It is such a beautiful thing. I love the people here. They're really quality people. And you'll find as you make connections here, if you put yourself out a little bit, if you make the effort to meet people, people tend to be very open to newcomers, meaning that they're not cliquish, they're not very closed off. And so you'll likely get invited to do other things if you start to take up your interests and go, and maybe that's playing board games with people or hiking with people that are like you. Maybe you have young ones, so you could do hiking with toddlers or something like that. There's literally groups for every interest, and it's so meaningful, the connections. It is definitely not superficial, which is something that you may experience where you live. Number 3 is that living in Vancouver, Washington, the biggest pro to me is kind of a quality of life hack. So you've got this hack when it comes to taxes, because you can live in Washington and you won't have any state income tax, but you can shop in Oregon and pay no sales tax when you're there. And you're pretty much 15 to 20 minutes from the airport, no matter where you are in Vancouver. You have access to the mountains, the coast, Portland. So kind of like choose your adventure, whatever experience you're looking to have, it can be had within about an hour and a half drive in any direction. You can get to the desert, you can get to the airport, you can get to wine country, you can get to skiing. I mean, it is, to me, so well positioned, and it increases our quality of life here. So I feel like that's a little hack about this area, but the secret's getting out. And then the fourth pro is development. And we really have this increase in development because of the first 3 pros that we covered. It's a beautiful place, the people are great, and it offers a great quality of life. And now developers and savvy people are starting to realize that this is such a gem of an area within the United States. So the pro to having more development is that it allows for more housing and for more people to enjoy living in our wonderful area. And it gives us things like the Vancouver waterfront. It gives us less reasons to go into Portland, which is a pro for a lot of people who live here. There's not a need to go into Portland, especially as Vancouver has developed and will continue to develop. There will just be more of everything that you need. I'm aware and privy of some developments that are coming to the area that I can't speak about just yet, but I do have some inside information, and I can say that if you're moving here, you will be excited to know these things and hear about some of the exciting new things that are going to happen within Vancouver. So those are 4 pros. Now let's talk a little bit about cons. I have 3 cons that I think are worth noting so that you are not coming to Vancouver thinking everything is sunshine and rainbows, which, I mean, it's the Northwest, so I know you're going to expect some gray, but that's actually not a con that we have to share with you today because it really depends on where you're coming from. My husband's from Philadelphia. The weather for him is a pro, especially compared to Southern California where we lived before we moved up here. I had a client who was from Chicago and she was stoked about the weather. She was like, I don't have any more harsh winters. That's great. So it really depends on where you're coming from. If you're coming from somewhere like Arizona and you like the heat, then the weather could be a con, but it's definitely not universal. So I did want to touch on that. So the number 1 con, I think, is spillover from Portland. There are some things that just by proximity, even though we are separated by the Columbia River and the state line, there are some things that spill over from Portland just as a result of proximity. So some of those things include property crime. We have higher property crime than normal, and I'm not saying that it's all because of Portland. I mean, every area has some level of crime. So our property crime is slightly higher than the national average, but our violent crime is less than the national average. So when we were looking to relocate here, that's one of the things that I noted. And for me, it was, I would rather have my property at risk than my personal safety at risk. And, you know, there's things that you can do to mitigate and prevent that. But I will say that crime is not something that I think about on a daily or even weekly basis. I might hear something that comes up in the Columbian and I'm like, oh, that's interesting, or oh, that's unfortunate that that happened, but it's not something that I think permeates our daily life. And I know someone asked a question about that in a comment recently, so I hope this answers it. The other thing you'll see that's kind of a spillover from Portland, but again, I mean, any city, any metropolitan city that you go to in the US is gonna have their own challenges with people who are unhoused. And so you do see some tent encampments around certain parts of Vancouver. But again, I mean, does it affect my daily life? No, I usually notice it when I'm driving by. Now, if there was a tent encampment on my front lawn or, you know, right behind my backyard or in the path of walking my children to school, then like that would affect me more. But, you know, depending on where you live, I mean, I would say for the majority of people in Vancouver, it doesn't affect their day-to-day life. And if you live in Vancouver, I'd love to hear your perspective on crime and encampments and, you know, just see, what do you think about the spillover from Portland? How has it affected your life, or what have you seen that indicates that there is some spillover from some of the cons in Portland over to Vancouver? The number 2 con is development. So there's definitely a positive side to development, but that also comes with some cons or at a cost. So the first thing would be, obviously there's less open space. So a good example of this is the Columbia Palisades. That is at the very southern part of Southeast 192nd Ave and the intersection of Highway 14. But the way I look at it is that it used to be a quarry from what? Quarry? I always struggle saying that word. What?
A rock quarry.
A rock quarry. Quarry? However you say. And I mean, that's not like beautiful open space. That's not like somewhere that people are walking through. It's industrial. And so I think that the Columbia Palisades is a much better benefit to the community than the quarry is from an open space and beauty perspective. And it allows people to enjoy it because there will be restaurants and development that will allow people, whether that's like restaurants, retail, there's going to be apartments and condos there. And I think it's going to be a great development. But that can be a con if there's less open space. And tying into that is an increase in traffic. So when we moved here 6 years ago, wow, time flies. There was a certain appeal and ease to getting around the city, but as more people come and there's more development and there's more dense development, that can increase traffic. So that would be a con. And then the last thing to me, like as part of the con of development, is just that the city can lose some of its charm. So some of the reasons that we love Vancouver, that people who've been here their whole lives love Vancouver, as it's more developed, it changes, the character of the city can change. So, and that brings us to the last con, which is affordability. And this is, again, highly relative, just like the weather. Depends on where you come from. If you come from somewhere very affordable like the Midwest or, parts of Florida and Georgia, it may seem like you are getting less for your money from a housing perspective here, and from some other things like the cost of food maybe. But specifically about housing affordability, when we moved here in 2018, the median sale price was around $360,000. Today in 2024, that median price is in the mid fives. Because we have such low inventory, it bounces more. So I've seen $585 is sometimes the median price depending on the month. Most recently in April of 2024, it was $535. And so the cost of housing has gone up significantly, and that can be a con. What's really happened is, I think, going back to the development side, developers have found what they see as Vancouver as this hidden gem, this place that, big money in Chicago and New York and Los Angeles, didn't really know about, but people are starting to know about it. Example of that is the Vancouver Innovation Center that is on in East Vancouver. It's a big 200-acre development that's being developed by a New York development company. I've met the guys who are doing that, and I think they're going to do a great job on it. They've really fallen in love with Vancouver, and I think they want to deliver something to our community that is going to be a benefit and that people are going to enjoy for a long time to come. So I would definitely say that investors and savvy people like yourself that are watching this channel, if you're thinking about relocating, have really, the cat's out of the bag, or is getting out of the bag. And I guess I would just say that this is really the beginning. I think that Vancouver could easily become like Bellevue. I think it's somewhere where we can support, being a suburb of Portland, just as much business and industry and job opportunities and people and development as Bellevue. So I could see Vancouver becoming like Bellevue, Washington, which is a suburb of Seattle, but has probably 40 high-rise buildings there and, big business and lots of jobs. And I mean, the real estate, what the real estate has done over the last 20 to 40 years is insane. And I think that Vancouver could easily become its own version of Bellevue, because we are that suburb of Portland and we have the benefits that can support that kind of development, that kind of industry, the kind of job opportunities. And we are the southernmost part along the I-5 corridor that has no state income tax. And that is a unique positioning to our area. So in closing, there are definitely pros and cons to living in Vancouver, Washington. I hope this video gave you an idea of what some of those pros and cons are and makes you feel more excited about moving here or relocating here. Or maybe it tells you, what, this really isn't the place for me, I need to look somewhere else. And either way, I feel like that accomplishes the goal of this video. If you are considering a move here, you might not be sure, or you might be moving next month for a job relocation. Wherever you are in the process, I would be happy to talk to you. That's one of the things that I really stand for on this channel and within our team, the Bird's Eye team, is that we want to be different than what we experienced moving here. And so we want to give people the time of day that we didn't get. And we just want to be that resource for you, that friend in the Northwest, to help you with all of your real estate needs. So please feel free to reach out. My team and I would be happy to support you. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. Make sure to like this video on your way out, and I will catch you guys next time. Ciao.